In a previous video, I did a review of the Atticus Jabba the Hutt statue. It was released in 2002, and in that video I said that it was the largest commercially available Jabba statue that's ever been made. However...
No, there is another.
Yes, there is one other, and that is what we're looking at today. This is the Illusive Concepts Jabba the Hutt statue from 1994, and it is also quite large. I think they are similar in height. It's a little difficult to really tell, just from my hand here, but if I kind of reach out, I have to get him pretty far away just to get him all in frame. He's probably roughly, I would say, I probably should have measured this. Well, let's just measure the base, shall we? It looks to be about 28 inches, 29 inches wide, and Jabba himself is maybe 26 inches wide. And in terms of his height off of the base, he's about 13 to 14 inches tall. So pretty big. And honestly, given the depth of this, which is, I don't know, about 18 inches, he is actually quite large. I think one of the reasons I didn't fully remember how large this thing was is that I have it up on the top of a bookshelf in my office, kind of buried in some other things that I don't have other places for. This is so large that it won't fit on a traditional shelf very easily, so that was basically the only place that I could put it. And when it's way up there, it doesn't look quite as large as, if you have it right in front of you. This was made, as I say, by Illusive Concepts, otherwise known as Illusive Originals. They were a company in the mid to late 90s that created a bunch of licensed Star Wars statues, although they were mostly made of foam and latex rubber, things like that. A bit different from what we would sort of associate with high-end statues today. They made a Rancor statue, which I've talked about in a previous video here. They made a Yoda statue. None of them, in my opinion, looked amazing. Like, at the time that they were bringing these out, they were like, oh, these are so amazing. We, looked at the original puppets from Lucasfilm and recreated them exactly. But, I mean, especially with something like Yoda, and also the Rancor, which I mentioned has a weirdly proportioned body and an oddly large face, I don't really think they're that great in terms of just accuracy. I do think they have a certain charm to them. They were sculpted by, I think all of them were sculpted by Mario Chiodo, who is a very good sculptor, and, I think the sculpts alone are pretty good, but when you bring them into the final product here, it doesn't quite translate as well, especially given the kind of primitive paint jobs that they were given back in the 90s. Anyway, what we're going to do is take a look at, of course, Jabba today, and see how he's held up over the last several decades. Boy, has it been that long. It's been almost 30 years just since this has been released. It's hard to believe. So, as I said, it's made out of some kind of a foam. I'm not sure exactly what is inside here, if the entire thing is somehow just solid with foam. I know some of the other characters had wire armatures inside, but there's no real point of doing that with him because he doesn't have any limbs sticking out or anything like that. But yes, you can definitely poke him anywhere, and he has some give to him. Honestly, does feel kind of like what I would imagine Jabba to have felt like, at least the puppet. One of the flaws of this kind of piece is that they have seams where the sort of skin comes together, and you can see here it is all along his tail and up here. He's got a seam, which doesn't look fantastic, although it's better than on some of the other pieces, I think. And if we look at him from this angle, honestly, this sculpt looks quite good, and you can really appreciate, too, how deep he is. It is a pretty impressive size, regardless of what you think about the rest of it. But the disadvantage of having this kind of material used in a statue is that it tends not to survive very well over the years. I've seen lots of these in really bad condition. They're cracked, they're falling apart. Not just these, but also the Yoda and the Rancor just didn't hold up that well. So I got my particular one here in 2009, and I don't really think it's changed much since then. It hasn't degraded at all. So I think it is true that given, proper storage and treatment, these can last pretty well, but a lot of them don't. I've seen a lot of them that are just falling apart and are terrible. I've also seen a lot of variations in the paint, which I don't entirely understand. I think part of it is just the paint deteriorating over time, depending on how these are, stored and everything. I've seen ones where it's like super dark orange. I don't think there would have been that much variation in the paint coloring from the factory. It seems very strange to me. So I'm guessing that they were all closer to this color. It's a little bit of a weird color, honestly. He's got the kind of beigey color on the stomach and face, which personally I would like to see more orange. And then the green is also kind of a bluish color in mine anyway, so not the greatest color scheme, but for the time, at least they do have, nice gradients between the colors. It's done with an airbrush. They did take some time to do it, at least. On his arm here, he's got the Hutt clan symbol there, just kind of drawn on in yellow paint, it looks like. Not quite what I would expect. I probably would have preferred it to be part of the sculpt, first of all, but also, I don't know, it just looks a little bit hand done. And the eyes as well. They do kind of have the details there, and I can't be sure if maybe mine has deteriorated over time, but yeah, it doesn't look quite like what I would expect. There's no, like, reddish-orange tinge to them. It's just kind of yellow. And the same goes for his tongue here, which you would expect to be pink or red or something like that, but is basically the same beige as the rest of him. He does have some, I'm not sure what they used here, resin or something to indicate his slobber. That may also have changed color over the years. I'm not sure if it was originally this sort of brown color or not. I think overall, as a sculpt, it's really not that bad. If this had been done in a more lasting material like a resin or polystone type thing. Obviously they didn't, I don't think they had polystone back in the 90s, but they had better stuff than this. And if they had painted it more accurately, this might have been actually quite good. However, given the way it is right now and the fact that so many of these are deteriorating, I don't really think I can recommend most people pick one of these up. Especially because, for whatever reason, if you look on eBay, a lot of these are going for really kind of insanely high prices. They did apparently make 5,000 of these. If you look here on my plaque, it's a nice shiny metal plaque. It says 2567 of 5,000. I don't know if they made the full 5,000 or not. So if you turn this around to look at his back, excuse me here, Jabba, you can see that there's not a lot of variation in the paint, really. There's a little bit of, I think, shading that they've done somehow, but it's basically just all the same green. Speaking of coloration, by the way, this wooden or particle board plaque that he's on has kind of an interesting color. It's flecked with basically some light green or blue, maybe it's sort of a teal coloration. Reminds me a lot of the color of the credits, going through space on a Star Wars intro, and I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it is kind of an interesting look. Also, if we look right here, we can see that there's kind of a built-in plaque or something built into the sculpt itself. So this is a little bit hard to read, but if you look at it, there's several interesting things about it. It says trademark and copyright 1994 Lucas Films. Lucasfilm, of course, is the name of the company, not Lucas, separate word, films. I'm surprised that this would have gotten past them. It certainly wouldn't today, I think, if they had that kind of easy error on a product. But anyway, Illusive Concepts and made in Mexico. So interesting. Of course, nowadays I imagine these would be made in China if they were to make something like this. Well, that's about it for today's video. I wanted to look at this piece, if for no other reason than because I hadn't looked at it before, just for the sake of completion, and I pretty much covered all of the other Jabba collectibles at this point. But I also thought it was interesting to think about what it would have been like to be a sort of high-end Star Wars collector back in the early to mid-90s. I was certainly not one of those at that point. I didn't have any money and kind of had at least partially moved on from Star Wars. I wasn't actively collecting anything at that point. If you had a lot of money and you wanted a Jabba, this was it at that point. And as a matter of fact, I recall when they were auctioning off the late Michael Jackson's sprawling collection that he had in Neverland, his ranch, he had one of these. And I remember thinking, poor guy, he has millions of dollars, and this is the best Jabba he could have gotten at the time. It's true, though. This would have been it. You didn't have a lot of choice at that point. And, just kind of interesting to think about. In any case, I'd be interested to know what you think about this piece. If you've ever seen one in person, or if you had one, let me know in the comments. And I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching. This video was brought to you with the help of my Patreon supporters, including Angelica Brady, Jesper Murtu, and these Palace VIPs that you see on your screen right now. I've been taking a little bit of a break recently for various reasons, so I haven't actually even been accepting new patrons, but I will start doing that very soon. So if you're interested, you can click the link in the video description to get a little bit more information. I really do appreciate everyone's support.